He is the chairman of the Punjab IT board, but that's just the official title. When I look at him, I see him as an innovator, somebody who's a man of ideas and has tried to implement them and bring about change where it is probably the most difficult to do. That is in the public sector and the government. And this was described to me by a bureaucrat beautifully when he turned around and said that, a government cannot be innovative and be thinking out of the box because the whole purpose of them is to be following rules, regulations, and be within that framework. So I think it would be a wonderful conversation to have with him and to try and understand how was he able to perform these miracles when he digitized not just the most populous, administration, the most populous province of Pakistan, but also bring about really innovative ideas, fetch the challenge, get people to believe, and actually acquire funds for that. I think that's where the key lies. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our very own, the chairman of the Punjab IT board, somebody we all keenly look forward to listening from, Dr. Umar Saif. Hello, and it is brilliant to see you in Karachi. Of course, this forum would have been incomplete without your input, but the first up question, because we're told strictly 15 minutes is what we have, Umar. Please tell me, how difficult was it to disrupt a very strong framework of government structures, public sector? People said that you had, the patronage of good offices, but other than that, how difficult was to make headway?
Well, for one, I haven't made the disruption as yet. I'm trying. It's a big, complicated machinery, the government, especially in a developing country like Pakistan. It really is very complicated. But I think we're making good progress now. And I think one indication of this is that the other people who've begun to compete with us, emulate us, hate us, and hence some of what we are doing is being perpetuated elsewhere also. So I think we've sort of put things in motion in a way that even if we don't succeed in fully disrupting, this status quo, ones that would come after us would hopefully succeed. It'll be much easier for them to operate, in the government in Pakistan.
Umar, what I'm looking for is really those, those nuggets of personal lessons in this journey, of course. So let's begin from the beginning. You were an academician, you were innovating, leading the good life, and then suddenly government happened to you. Was it a big challenge? Was it the impact? I mean, were you driven to create impact on a large scale? That's why you joined in?
Well, when I used to live outside of Pakistan, I went to Cambridge for my grad school and worked at MIT for many years. And in both these places, there were lots of Pakistanis. And I remember that, late at night, these Pakistanis would all get together over tea or dinner, and all we would do is complain about Pakistan. Judge Pakistan, complain about Pakistan, and then promise each other that we'll move back to Pakistan next year and fix everything. Right? And that conversation played out day in and day out, almost on a daily basis. And that resonated with me. I was one of them. So I would judge and criticize Pakistan, then say, next year I'm going to move to Pakistan and change everything, and all of these are crooks and idiots, and I'm going to fix this. And that went on for many years in my life also. And then one day I decided to move back, largely for personal reasons. I wanted to be close to my aging parents. And that was sort of on a 3-month notice. I decided I'm going to move back. I handed in my resignation. Divorcing from a university is never easy. You have courses lined up, you have students, grants, etc. But I moved back and started working at LUMS. And in my sabbatical year from LUMS, I had just won a few awards. But my awards are esoteric. They're typically not well known to people who are not in academia. But this one award, the local media picked up on. And ran it in sort of mainstream 9 p.m. news bulletin or something. I wasn't aware of how much the local media picked up on.
You were on prime time, huh?
On prime time, that's right. And unknown to me, I got a call from a journalist saying that, you've won this award, I want to interview you. I didn't think much of it. But a couple of days later, I got this call from the Chief Minister of Punjab. And I was driving down to LUMS for my lecture. This is early in the morning, 8:30-ish. And I got a call from him saying, I'm Shahbaz Sharif, I want you to come meet with me, have breakfast with me, and we are very proud of what you've accomplished and so on. Initially I thought it was a prank call, but then his staff followed up.
Only you could have imagined the Chief Minister pranking with you, huh?
It's just that I'd never expected a politician from Pakistan to call me for the work that I do. And I had very little aspiration of actually working for the government. In fact, in my sabbatical, I had just received a Google Faculty Research Award, which gives you some money, no strings attached. So I was actually hoping to spend that year at Berkeley with my collaborator on a company that eventually became quite big. But I get this phone call, so I found myself in this breakfast room with him. It was really a very small room. And he said, come work for me. And my initial response was, God forbid. And he did not appreciate that. In fact, two other people in the room were quite taken aback by that response also. So he said, why? And I said, you certainly don't know me, but people who know me would say that I'm very sharp-elbowed, I step on toes, I run fast. I want to get somewhere. I'm not the smiling, nodding, bureaucratic kind. So, maybe that I'm not the kind of person you're looking for. You want someone who's more amenable, more pliable,
Which is what the expectation or the impression is. But Umar, a few years down the line, what impact do you believe you've made? Because we've interacted several times when the government tried to bring in business loan program for young people, and you and I both witnessed how closed up on the ideas they were. We remember, and this is a little thing I share with you all in confidence, that when they were making those lists of industries that they'd like to sponsor people in, or offer an easy installment, easy conditions loan towards, they were very focused on very traditional areas. In fact, times when you wanted to show services sector, we were categorically asked to take those images out. So from that point to actually telling them that people with a few laptops, with an amazing idea, can actually bring about change and have brilliant, smart ideas. Do you think we've made progress?
No, absolutely. I was doing some of this before joining the government. I came back to Pakistan in 2006. What I did as part of my thesis work at Cambridge became a very large company, was bought out by Citrix for about $800 million. What I did at MIT became a very large company, was sold out for about $400 million. And then I moved back. I remember a conversation with a student who was graduating from LUMS. And he came to me and said, I've just gotten this job, but I want to marry this girl. and her parents are not letting her marry me because they think this job doesn't pay that well and I don't have a great future. This was actually a good job. I thought it was a good job coming out of LUMS. So I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to start my own company. So I said, all right, I've been working in my garage in my free time on this interesting idea. Why don't you join me? He said, all right, on what terms? So I said, why don't you take 15, 20% of the equity and this much salary and this and that? And it just, I'd never done this before in Pakistan. He said, all right, I have two other friends. I'll bring them along. Mm-hmm. So he brought those two other friends also in an abandoned guest room in my house. I started this little company. It was called Bump In at the time. And we bought some second-hand computers and some furniture and so on and so forth. I didn't have a lot of money from my lump salary. And hence we started that one company. 2 months later, a couple of students from FAST came along and said, we want to start a company with you. And we are willing not to even take a salary. But we want equity and so on. So hence we started another company. Then a bunch of undergrads who were still enrolled at LUMS wanted to start another company. And what I found, and I ran out of real estate very quickly in my house, but my dad had just built a little building, so we started, we moved these 3 offices there, and we started calling it an incubator. This is in 2007. This is called the Saif Center of Innovation, allegedly the first incubator in Pakistan. So I was doing this before I started working for the government.
And now you've scaled up. But tell me
actually, it was the first thing that as soon as I started working for the government, the first thing that I did was to start investing in trying to put together a startup incubator. Now, explaining that to bureaucrats, politicians, etc., is not straightforward, right? This is a difficult proposition to explain to the government why the government should be setting up a startup incubator. But Jahan had visited my little facility privately, and there were others. So I called Jahan, I called Khurram, I called a bunch of other people and said, I'm setting up an incubator. You join my advisory board. All of them agreed. Right. We had a first meeting in Lahore.
You've always had great company with people like
absolutely.
Jahan and
I think Pakistan has great people who are willing to, I get a salary for work that I do, but I always tell other people that these people don't get a salary for, for doing this, right? They do it
the best thing I've
really
heard in this regard is when you can actually earn a living for being yourself. Like, I think there's no other way or better way to describe what Umar does, because Dr. Umar Saif earns a living for being Dr. Umar Saif. And I think that's the most wonderful thing you can do for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. But since you've already confessed that you're not going to be smiling and whitewashing the government, so please tell us that we all want the governments and the policymakers to be more conducive, creating a more conducive environment for innovators, entrepreneurs. What is the government doing wrong right now?
I think the government is doing a lot of right things.
No, let's start with the wrong things.
The government is doing a lot of right things, and let's not talk about that. But the government is doing several wrong things, I'm sure, also. One, governments are not known for innovative new things that could be done. We are liable for financial audits and judgments and political uncertainty. It's very difficult to work in government, and I can't possibly begin to tell how frustrating it gets at time working for the government, in a very politically uncertain environment, with media, which, sort of just is largely scandalous and interested in just scandalous news. It really is quite difficult. So you have to be very, very careful with what you do. But I think the government is sitting on lots of funds that really could be plowed back to start venture capital in Pakistan. And I think there is now movement in that direction from the federal government. I think the government could put together policy where startups are exempt from certain taxes and duties. The government could really put together good legislation and framework in place for venture capital to come into Pakistan and go out of Pakistan easily, even if there are exits here. The government needs to do a better job helping startups here grow internationally. The government needs to do a better job bringing large international companies to Pakistan. I played a role and then paid the price also to bring Uber Careem to Pakistan because I saw them as opportunities where they could come in and acquire my startups in Pakistan and ran into some serious resistance with the government with sort of traditional businesses that we have here. But we need to do more of this. And there's US Counsel General sitting here, et cetera. I remember whenever big US companies bidding for projects in Lahore, I run a fairly large sector in Punjab now, it's the Counsel General office and the commercial council and so on, always lobbying for their companies. I've never seen that happen from Pakistan. And I've always spoken to my Commerce Ministry, Federal Commerce Ministry, that we need to do a better job at this. When Pakistani companies are traveling internationally, bidding for projects, trying to build businesses, incorporate them in US, in Europe, the government is totally absent. Finding the commercial counselor, itself is difficult enough, even for someone like me.
And this perhaps is not just something unique to Pakistan, but happens internationally as well. We should be doing more. But my last questions, because we're almost at the end tail of our time, internationally again, because we all want to be seen as dreamers, innovators, we're big advocates of disrupting and creating more value, but that is only till a certain point. Even the best case scenarios, the examples we all share of Airbnb, of Careems and the Ubers, now are facing a lot of backlash from other stakeholders around the globe. What could be the way forward for it? I mean, there's old that is getting disrupted by the new, but there's a lot of mediation that is needed. How do we adapt to that?
Well, I think the world is sort of changing quickly. I remember a very powerful group of businessmen who visited me in my office, told me that I'm not good for their business because they've invested in taxis and infrastructure, and they just can't seem to compete with these stupid companies that don't own anything but run a mobile app and helps them, helps people transfer from one place to the other. So they said, we've made all this investment in Pakistan, we've created all these jobs, and you're supporting these stupid companies that are making mobile apps, and they don't own any taxes or have not made any investments in Pakistan. So I said, welcome to the new world. That's just the way that business is getting disrupted. And we're just getting started. Transportation is one such sector, banks is next, telecoms is, the writing is on the wall. So all large businesses that we know now, at this point in time, which create large jobs, whether that's the telecom industry, the media, banks, are all going to go away 5 to 10 years from now. Pharmaceutical industry is going to radically change 5 to 10 years from now. We've started to edit genes, etc. So all of that is going to change drastically. Old businesses are going to get disrupted. A whole new economy of innovation, new company, new startups are going to come in. And the government must be ready to do legislation, policy, frameworks around that. For instance, Pakistan doesn't have a great policy for e-commerce. Do you get taxed where you warehouse? Do you get taxed from where you run your website? Do you get taxed where you deliver your goods? We don't have that. Mobile payments, Pakistan has, for electronic payment gateways, has dragged its feet as long as we could. Without mobile payments, we can't really have e-commerce. Even though Pakistan, the number of internet users in Pakistan are more than the entire population of Canada. And I keep telling this to myself. Don't let anyone come in and tell you Pakistan is not an important market for us. It is an important market. It is bigger than Canada. Just the mere number of Facebook, Twitter users in Pakistan, bigger than the population of Australia and New Zealand combined. This is a big country. Everyone must take it seriously. And if you look at numbers from Facebooks and Googles and Twitters and Kareems and Ubers, Pakistan is one of the fastest growing markets for everyone. They wouldn't admit it because they don't want you to gatekeep them in Pakistan, but we are one of the largest growing markets in the world. And the government just needs to do a better job at regulating, doing a better legislation, doing a better policy framework. And inshallah, I think we're getting there. There's finally positive movement in that direction. And I see great things happening in this great country.
Thank you, Umar, for those insightful comments and some wonderful advice. On a side note, this is music to my ears because he's telling me practically that we are going to be in business for the next 3 or 4 decades, mediating, making sure that this framework is as amiable as it can be. Thank you very much for that, Umar.